Of course, one of the key matters of this portfolio, which I have inherited, is that of Tottenham Hotspur's FC and South African tourism sponsorship proposal, which has been in the public domain for a few weeks. Given the circumstances we find ourselves in economically, we have to be much more careful and give careful consideration of everything that we do as government. Money must be spent wisely and prudently at all times, as we are entrusted with public funds. Just also to explain that South African tourism is an entity of the Department of Tourism, and it was established in terms of the Tourism Act 3 of 2014. So in terms of the proposed Tottenham sponsorship matter, some of the key information before me and some information which is in the public domain includes, and I want to go through it in a chronological order just to refresh all our memories. A presentation from Tottenham was made to a number of South African tourism officials in December of 2022 here in South Africa. South African Tourism Board members then travelled to London between the 12th and the 17th of January 2023. On the 27th of January 2023, the board considered the proposed sponsorship with Tottenham and asked the management to address certain aspects and table an amendment proposal to the board. On the 31st of January 2023, at around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the matter first appeared in the media via the Daily Maverick. Later that day, around about 10 o'clock the same day, the South African Tourism Board approved the proposal. The approval was subject to consultation with the Minister of Tourism and with National Treasury. As you all know, this matter also served before the Portfolio Committee of Tourism on the 21st of February 2023. And after my appointment, I immediately sought and obtained legal advice regarding the Tottenham matter. And in terms of that legal advice, there are 3 reasons why the Tottenham sponsorship, as found by the legal opinion, is unlawful and invalid. And I'll just briefly go through the 3 reasons from the legal opinion. That the sponsorship is in fact a procurement event which does not comply with Section 217 of the Constitution and Treasury instructions issued in terms of the Public Finance Management Act and also South African Tourism own supply chain management policy. It appears that the sponsorship is a service which was proposed to be acquired by procurement through sole source. Sole source procurement is, however, only allowed where there is no competition in the market and only one supplier is able to provide the goods and services, which in this case it does not appear to be the case. That the sponsorship has not been budgeted for as required in terms of Section 53 of the PMFA, and that the expenditure therefore would be irregular or unauthorized within the meaning of the terms within the PMFA. Also, that the deal amounts to a significant partnership transaction which require my prior approval in terms of Section 54(2) of the PFMA. However, I have written to the South African Tourism Board on Wednesday, the 22nd of March, asking for their response regarding the above legal opinion, and I've asked the board to respond to me by the 29th of March. The board has, however, responded this morning, the 24th of March, and sent me an interim response, and a copy of their letter is attached to the media statement. I've also written to the Minister of Finance on the 10th of March 2023 to inquire whether he had approved the proposal or transaction, and I have yet to receive a response from the Minister of Finance. Then I've also attached a letter to the South African Tourism Board on the key information that I was seeking from the board. And just briefly to run through it, I wanted to know, has the Tottenham deal formally been cancelled? And if it has been cancelled, can I have the proof of that? I further asked the board, does the board regard the Tottenham deal to be a form of sole source procurement? And if so, the board has been asking to explain how the requirements for such form of procurement have been met. Also, does the board regard the Tottenham deal to be a significant transaction which trigger the need for my prior approval? And if so, will the board request my approval, and when? I also ask, has the Tottenham deal been budgeted for in the 22-23 financial budget? And if not, why is the expenditure on the deal not unauthorized or irregular within the meaning of those terms in the PMFA? Now, as the Minister of Transport, of Tourism, we are committed to growing tourism, getting into untapped markets, and truly reaching our full potential. However, everything we do will be done in accordance with the law and due process. Now, in this time of a global economic crisis, we need innovation, we need to work together to grow our market and create more jobs for our people in a cost-effective manner. This matter has been marred by a lot of controversy and has raised many questions. And we need to resolve this matter decisively and in the best interest of the people of South Africa as soon as possible. As a country, when we enter into such massive partnerships, it is vital that we are able to fully be accountable, that we are transparent, and can answer South Africans clearly and honestly. So based on the board chairperson's interim response that I received this morning, my advice to the South African Tourism Board is that this proposal may as well be stopped completely. End of my statement. So that is where we are. And for the sake of transparency, I have also included all the correspondence between myself and the board for your perusal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Colleagues, members of the media, I'll start with questions from those in the room. We've got EWN's got your hand up first. If you can just introduce yourself, name, surname, and your media house, and then your question. Can we get any others? So Heidi Jokos from ENCA will be second, and anyone else? And then a third one. So we'll start with EWN, Heidi, and then the third question, you may go.
Hi, Tavisa Koba from Eyewitness News. Minister, the SA-Tourism CEO, whose name has fortunately escaped me, he was on a radio show on 702, and he said that, as you explained the timelines, that, this was the deal before it obviously broke in the news. This was a deal that was a long time in the making. So a lot of efforts and resources had been spent on sort of making this deal possible. Do we know how much has been spent by the SA Tourism just so far? And basically now, what you're saying, are you saying that all of that effort was, all of that resources spent, has it all been for nothing? So those are my two questions.
Thank you, Heidi.
Heidi Jokos from ENCA. Minister, so you've just said now that the deal must basically be stopped. I just want to know, in terms of those that were part of the deal and were part of, negotiations, whatever, just being part of the deal, is there going to be any action taken against them? Because in the statement you say it's invalid and unlawful. So what happens to those that were part of this deal? I also think that there are members of the board that were suspended. What happens to them?
Minister Tatel Sohoto from Kaya FM. Minister, when this deal came about initially, there were reasons cited that it would benefit the tourism sector. Were you given any kind of motivations of how this deal or the sponsorship would significantly benefit the sector? And do those reasons also basically, do they not suffice, and that's why you've taken that approach that the deal should be stopped? So what reasons were you given, and do the reasons you were given mean that they didn't suffice?
Thank you for the questions. Now, in terms of how much have been spent so far on this deal, I did not get that full breakdown. I did receive a report from the board about a week ago about the deal. And that report is available. But this morning with us here, we also have the acting CEO of SA-Tourism in the room with us. And specific questions to SA-Tourism can also be put to Mr. Khumalo. Mr. Khumalo, I hope you don't mind. I also need to keep the separation between my role and responsibility and the fiduciary duties of the board. In terms of the board in itself, I've received a number of questions from members of parliament about the composition of the board, about the resignation of some of the board members. That matter is receiving my attention. I will be engaging with the board to get their side as to what transpired. I didn't get any information from my predecessor as to what has happened with the replacement of members on the board. So the whole composition of the board and how people were appointed to the board is still receiving my attention. Yes, there was a motivation in the report that I received from the board about the value of this. But looking at the value of what we can benefit as South Africans or as a country, you have to weigh that up against other priorities within our country. And whether in fact it is justifiable or reasonable that we spend that amount of money on one transaction. Yes, I have considered it, but I've also considered the outcry from the public around the issue, because at the end of the day we are accountable to South Africans, and that is why today I thought it will be helpful to give you an update of where we are with this. And therefore, my advice to the board, considering all of these factors, considering the priorities that we need in our country, and considering that this thing is out in the public, we owe the public an explanation. But finally, it's the fiduciary duties of the board. They have not consulted with me, as I was saying here. And that's why I'm saying today, my advice to the board is to stop this transaction. I think I've tried to cover everything. In terms of the suspended members, the same thing. I still have to get a report about the reason for their suspension. Just yesterday, I was dealing with a question from a member of parliament for the reasons of suspension. And therefore, I've requested that from the board before I can even answer the members of parliament. So all the board matters is still under consideration. And once I'm done with that and have considered the inputs from all the affected parties, including getting the reasons for the resignation of the board members, then I'll be able to give you a full and a more comprehensive answer. I'm very new. I'm there for 2 weeks. I'm trying to deal with as many issues at the same time, so I hope you will understand that when I do part with information, that it must be verified. I must have consulted on these issues, so I will come back to you about the issues around the board at a later stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Colleagues in the room, any other questions? Heidi's got a follow-up as well as EWN. So those are 2 follow-up hands and Newsroom Africa. And then, Vanessa, are there any questions from the online?
No, we do not have any online questions so far.
Okay, nothing at this stage. So Heidi, you may go with your follow-up, then EWN, and then Newsroom Africa.
Again from ENCA. Minister, I think there's a bit of confusion. So you keep saying my advice is that the deal be scrapped. Is this an instruction to the board and SA Tourism that the deal cannot go forward, or is it up to the board and SA Tourism to make that decision ultimately, despite your advice that the deal should not go forward? What exactly does this mean? Does this mean the deal cannot go forward, or it's just your advice given on the legal opinion that you have received? And ultimately, will the board have to just decide, and whatever they decide, whether they go ahead with it or not?
Tali Sokolo from Eyewitness News again. I understand that you said the SA-Tourism chairperson or acting CEO is here. I just want to ask, is the SA-Tourism, obviously, their mandate is to obviously market South Africa to the world. Are they considering a similar deal to this, and what sort of deals are they working on at the moment that are maybe similar but maybe cost not as much as this Tottenham Hotspur deal?
Mr. Kumalo, can you maybe come here? Mr. Kumalo is the acting CEO of SA-Tourism.
Minister, Metro from Newsroom Africa. I was asked to ask you this question. Is there any update with regard to the renovation being done on Parliament? And if there, what is the time frame for when it will be fixed?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and colleagues. I think it's important to separate out a few issues. Issue number one is that the Honorable Minister has written to the board and has requested that the board responds to the matters that have been raised in the Minister's letter by Wednesday next week. Therefore, in terms of the content of the letter and the issues raised by the Minister, I am not in a position to respond to that until the board has responded to the Minister. So I'm not going to comment on those particular issues. What I can respond to is the issue of the marketing mandate itself. Not on the Tottenham issue, but on the marketing mandate itself. We are mandated as South African Tourism to market the country internationally and domestically. And in respect of the tourism sector recovery plan of 2021, that is exactly the mandate. And the two very distinct things that are contained in that document is to recover international travel to pre-COVID conditions, levels, and to build beyond, and also to drive domestic tourism. So therefore, we continually look for opportunities in order to continue that marketing effort. And insofar as it sticks to that particular mandate, we will continue to do so. In terms of whether there are other deals that we are looking at of a similar nature, that I cannot comment on because that is directly in the domain of the letter that has been written to the board. So I'm going to end there and I hope that answers the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kumalo. If I can respond to Heidi's question first. Heidi, that there is no concluded deal that is being signed. It is not being signed by anybody. And therefore, if you, based on the information that I have received, that the board approved the proposed deal subject to consultation with the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Finance. And that's why I've written to the board to ask them. But from the information before me, I have not seen any signed deal or contract with Tottenham. And that is why, because it's still a proposal, my advice to the board is to stop to further try and complete this proposal. That is why I say it's my advice to the board to stop further dealing with this proposal. Just on the Newsroom 24, Newsroom Africa. Well, I will just answer up till the time when I was there. Before I left, I have signed over a delegation to Parliament in terms of the Government's Immovable Asset Management Act of 2007 to devolve our power to repair Parliament to Parliament itself. Parliament has engaged the services of the Development Bank of Southern Africa. That is where I left the matter. So in future, the Speaker and the Secretary of Parliament will give you updates on the time frames. What was the other one? The gentleman here in front, I didn't get your question. Can you just repeat that?
It was for the secret.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. I'm just going to do another check on the online platforms, Vanessa, if there are any questions on the WhatsApp line.
No, we still do not have any questions.
Okay. Colleagues, I take it that everybody's had the opportunity to ask their questions and questions answered. So thank you very much for all of your time and attention today, and obviously all of the support staff here that has assisted us. And that concludes the briefing. Thank you so much.